welcome everyone. My name is Kelly Scott. I'm the director of the Farm Robotics Challenge, and I work for the USDA-ARS Innovate team. And I'll be serving as the moderator for today's discussion. Just want to let you know, we're excited to kick off. This is the first in our webinar series, created especially for this year's challenge teams. And these sessions are designed to educate, inspire, and provide insights into the real challenges in agriculture, and then giving you the information to help move your projects forward throughout the competition. So this year marks the 4th year of the competition, and we're thrilled to see it continue to grow and reach an ever expanding audience. We're in very early stages of our recruitment cycle. We already have 32 teams registered from all across the world, including the United States, Australia, Brazil, Canada, India, and more. And also, for the first time, we've opened up new divisions for the 2-year community colleges and also high schools and middle schools. And just here in California alone, those additions are expected to bring in another 30 to 40 teams that are going to be participating this year, kind of making the field much more dynamic than ever. And I think all of this speaks to one clear fact. Agrobotics is not just timely, but essential. And this challenge is ideal platform for all these creative minds to showcase what's possible. So we're excited that you're here today. If you are tuning in, not as a registered team, but as a prospective team that just wants to learn more and you're a little bit on the fence, I hope that by the end of today's session, you'll feel real inspired to get involved and commit to this meaningful work. So, let's see here. Before we dive into today's session, I just want to pause and acknowledge how fortunate we are to have a dedicated group of supporters behind us. Our partners are committed to helping build this competition and truly serve as your top cheerleaders. They're invested in your success. They're generally enthusiastic that you're directing your time and talent towards projects that make an impact in the ag community, and whenever possible, eager to support your journey even beyond this competition by opening doors to new opportunities. So, whether it's invitations to present at industry or academic conferences, offers on one-on-one mentorship, access to accelerator programs, or even the possibility of investment for those pursuing startups, by joining this competition, you become part and connect to this network that will continue to champion your growth. So let's make the most of this opportunity together. And I look forward to seeing the connections and successes that continue to emerge from this community. So for today's session, and building on that theme, I'm delighted to introduce several individuals who embody the spirit of support and innovation that I just described. I'm thrilled that they're joining us for this panel. Each brings an impressive depth of expertise in ag technology, and together they offer a diverse spectrum of their own personal experiences in leadership roles in the field. So kicking things off, I'm going to give a short intro, but then I want to give each guest 2 minutes to talk about their background and a little bit about the role they're playing now. So going through this from left to right, Danny Bernstein is CEO of Reservoir. Reservoir is a visionary, multifaceted company and ecosystem that merges a venture capital firm with the world's first on-farm startup incubator. Very cool. Next, we have Brendan Dowdle, is Chief Business Officer for Bonsai Robotics. Bonsai is a leading ag tech company providing vision-based AI autonomy solutions that either retrofit on existing ag equipment or power new equipment. And many of you in this competition are probably familiar with the Amiga robot platform. So Bonsai acquired FarmNG over the summer and has added this product to their lineup. Next, we have Walt Duflock, VP of Innovation for Western Growers. Western Growers is an association representing specialty crops, the leading fruit, vegetable, and tree nut growers in the Western United States. And Walt is a key connector and catalyzing ag innovation for the region's farming community. And then rounding things out, we have Dr. Stephen Mirsky. He's a research scientist and ecologist with the USDA Agricultural Research Service. He leads interdisciplinary teams, advancing site-specific, sustainable agriculture, and integrates technology for cover crops and precision methods to really drive outcomes nationally for the USDA. So we've got, as you can see, a great panel of individuals. I think at this time, I'm going to pause the share, and I'd like Danny, if you could introduce yourself real quick, your background, and a little bit more about Reservoir and what you're doing now.
Yeah, that sounds great. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining, and great to be, amongst friends here on this panel. And so, yeah, what the Reservoir is a on-farm robotics incubator, really for deep tech startups. We were founded on a simple principle, which was that we observed a real gap in startup support for startups focused on non-urban challenges. So kind of a saturation of support in places like San Francisco, but not enough support if you're doing something like what the Amiga does in row crops or in bedded crops, things like that. So that's what we founded the Reservoir to do, is to provide that support. We also have a fund where we invest mostly in early stage companies. And our role with the Farm Robotics Challenge is that we're the innovation partner. What that means is that we will award a grand prize winner that wants to spin their project out into a company. We will make a $50,000 equity investment in that company. So we're excited to do that because we invest very early, and we really want to invest with deep tech founders that are creating disruptive technologies in ag robotics. And what better way to do that with the first and only, and we think the best farm robotics competition.
Great, thank you so much, Danny. Brendan, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. And I concur, Danny. It's great to be amongst friends. Maybe just a shout out to Danny. Danny was one of the earliest investors in FarmNG and is a big supporter of us. We credit a lot of our success to the support that he's provided us. So we're big fans of the Reservoir and what the mission that they're on here. Yeah, so just a bit. Kelly, you shared an overview of Bonsai pretty well here. Bonsai is an autonomy solutions provider for agricultural markets. We are focused on building autonomy solutions through either existing equipment and new form factors, like you can see behind me. Our flagship product on the hardware side is the Amiga robot. The Amiga is think of it as a modular a robotic mobile base that can be customized to various tasks and applications on a farm. And why we're so excited about the Farm Robotics Challenge is that this platform really provides an opportunity for innovation and an opportunity to rethink practices on the farm. And we think the Farm Robotics Challenge is a great way where creative ideas, expertise, the talent that the students bring to the challenge can be applied in real world situations. So we're very excited to be here, and thanks for the opportunity, Kelly, to be part of the panel.
Absolutely. No, you guys have been part of it from the very beginning. So yeah, let's keep it going. Walt, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Kelly. I'll echo everyone else. Great to be on this call with everybody. Western Growers' main opportunity here that we identified was to hopefully found, the next company Danny can invest in, and the next company that turns into Brendan's company, right? So we're going to be giving an award of some capital, and more importantly, some access to our growers to the startups that come out of this competition. And you think of our member base, it's really 2,000 plus of the world's largest fruits, nuts, and vegetable growers. We're already working with the 700 plus automation startups to vet them, help them, support them on the way to commercialization and scale, and then getting case studies and field trials together for them. We'd love to put some folks from this competition into that funnel as well. Look forward to working with you guys, and look forward to a fun year with some good outcomes.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Walt. Dr. Mirsky, over to you.
Great. Thanks. It's pleasure, as everybody said, to be part of the panel today and know many of these faces. So it's good to see you all again. Yeah, I'm here representing USDA and particularly DASH, the Digital Ag Systems Hub, which I'll sort of unpack in a second. But USDA-ARS is, we're agricultural research and we're embedded in every cropping system, every climate, every soil, every management regime across the country. So we are sort of those eyes, ears, and boots on the ground doing sort of ag research. And I'm sort of classically trained as an agronomist and soil scientist, pest management, but last 10 years we've been running, sort of a little bit of just a ag tech sort of mini sort of enterprise within USDA to sort of scale an enterprise AI and phenotyping across the agency. And really the focus is how we can develop phenotyping solutions for plant scientists, breeders, and tools and technologies that feed right into the hands of farmers as well. And so DASH is really focused upon going across the country and building sort of the national plant agricultural image repository that we refer to as AgIR. So it's an open access digitizing of our agricultural systems, which I think is a key role for the public sector. And we're also developing modular camera systems that can be bolt onto any type of platform for deploying these the models developed from that those training data. Thanks.
All right. Yeah. Very important work. Thank you, Stephen. Okay. So we're going to kick things off with the first softball question, really. And I think we'll just go in reverse order from the introductions. And this is a pretty simple one, but it's, what fundamental shifts in agriculture are creating the most significant opportunity for robotics and AI? And Stephen, I'd like you to compare, where we've been in the past to really what's happening today and what that looks like.
Yeah, well, I think what Kelly's referring to, he likes this narrative that I told about, like 200 years ago, we had a lot of precision agriculture, right? We had lots of eyes looking across the field. We were able to manage weedier parts of the field just because of the density of humans out there in the field, right? Fast forward today, we've got, 1% of all of you are involved in agriculture. So it's just a massive loss in this, human intelligence, if you will. And not that the farmers were smarter, just we have a lot less farmers out there in the fields seeing and doing. And so we need to bring that sensing, those eyes back into the hands of the farmers. And that's what a lot of these cameras are allowing us to do. We have, many farmers are maybe going across their field sometimes 1 to 3 times in a season. So it's not a lot of times to see what's going on out there and a lot of the variability that exists and sort of the problems that are occurring on finer cadences. And so the amount of sensing technology we have, that you had this big reduction in the cost of edge computing, including the sensors and the compute. You have these rising input costs, right? And our commodities, are often lower in price, right? So all of this is sort of driving the need for innovation in AI. And robotics, we're answering a big part of the solution around, labor, right? We've got big labor issues. It's very costly. And so this is sort of feeding us, it's sort of teeing us up for the sort of the perfect storm of really needing robotic and AI solutions in agriculture.
Yeah, just to tag on to that before I go over to Walt, one of the things I like you said in a previous interview was that there's a criticism often that robotics is going to replace people, but your argument was, well, we've already lost people, and there's the evidence. So we need to get those eyes, back on the field, and robotics is the way to do things. So, Walt, what about you? What fundamental shifts in ag are creating the most significant opportunities for robotics and AI?
Yeah, I would say, Kelly, in simplest terms, it's the never-ending increase in cost for that labor. And to Stephen's point, it is increasingly, we're running out of labor on the farm. We're running out of domestic workers to work on the farm. So increasingly, we've had to go to international. And if you look at the current breakdown for California, 425,000 farm workers, we're up to now over 10% of them are H-2A. They're international. And of course, with those international workers, it's not just the $20 an hour that domestic workers get that we can find. It's another 8 to 10 for housing, transportation, and food. And so where farmers were looking at a big number, 10 years ago of $18 to $20 an hour for domestic, and we were using, less than 3% H2A, every H2A percentage point just bumps up the number of $30 hours farmers have to work into the budget. And so I've seen more and more increasing demand, and which is amazing because some of you guys on the call, I'm sure, are familiar with how big a challenge water is becoming, things like food safety are becoming. But I would say labor is number one with a bullet the last 5 years, just because of this increasing in the number of $30 hours. And robots are really the only and best way we can solve it at scale.
Great. Brendan, what would you add to that from your perspective? What are the fundamental shifts that are creating opportunities for your products?
Yeah, I mean, I would concur with both what Stephen and Walt shared here. I mean, I just, maybe to give a story and an anecdote, we have a customer, Larry Jacobs Del Cabo. He is very forward thinking in terms of regenerative practices, practices that, support, essentially growing food, sustainably with high nutrition, with minimal inputs. But those practices are very labor intensive. And so Larry was facing a dilemma of, do I continue these practices or do I revert to chemical-based solutions here to be able to manage my cost and be able to produce, based on what the commodity price is allowing me to produce. And so we're seeing growers basically, as a result of these labor challenges, the cost challenges, make kind of sacrifices on how they grow their food in ways that are not necessarily beneficial for, the nutritional value of that food, certainly not for the environmental, impact on our growing techniques. And so robotics has been a way where he can turn an 8-person job into a 1-person job, but more importantly, he can continue a practice that's very important to essentially generating the output that he needs in order to be a profitable grower.
Yeah, it's great to hear that. I love that story. Danny, would you add anything to the mix here?
Yeah, I'll add something. It's just sort of, I think, something really unique to the specialty crop ecosystem in particular. And I know that we're a global competition, but there are over 600 commodities in California, all of which require labor to farm, all of which require really specialized labor. And so as a result of that, there ends up opening this huge opportunity for really specialized robotics. And there are incredibly sophisticated companies like John Deere who have a handful of form factors, but they're never going to have a form factor that works that in a specialized way for every single commodity. It's just not possible. And so it ends up opening these really significant opportunities in the stack. And that could be a specialized robot for a single commodity like we see with harvesters. It also could be a solution as a service that plugs into other robotics companies. And so that's where the Amiga platform and other platforms like it are so interesting. So there is just a never-ending list of problems to solve. And it's so right. And the analogy I would provide, maybe if you're not from the ag world, is if when you buy your iPhone, the iPhone comes with certain apps. It comes with maps. It comes with music. It comes with a couple other things. But Apple can't possibly make everything. So that's where you even have these massive businesses like Uber or Snap or Meta that are actually built on their ecosystems. And we have a really similar opportunity with agriculture where we have all these niche applications, and there's so much opportunity for robotics and so much opportunity where these sort of critical challenges, that Stephen underlined around sort of a brain drain of agriculture, where that technology can really fill that gap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's perfect. I want to talk a little bit about, for the challenge, we basically have 2 bullet points that would kind of set as our North Star. One of them is to help farmers solve problems, essentially what we're talking about. And the second is to inspire students to pursue careers in agriculture. We have a big mix of student majors that participate in this competition, many of whom do not come from an ag background, that are maybe CS students that haven't spent a lot of time on the farm, or any other major you could think of. There's been math, physics, business, all the engineering disciplines. And I'd like to start with the the innovation aspect, but then also move into maybe more the workforce development, which is, the number one reason students go to college is so that they can get education and get a great job, right? So starting with that first point, the innovation bullet, I want to ask you, Brendan, we'll start here. We've had conversations before where we've talked about how can we guide students to work on the right aspects? And you did a really good job of explaining what's available commercially and has been solved with a lot of capital investment. And then where we need the students to kind of focus their energy that's going to give the most bang for the buck, essentially. So could you comment to that? And
Sure.
share
Yeah,
your
maybe
thoughts.
I'll borrow Danny's analogy here too. It's like when Uber sought to build a ride sharing app, they didn't start by building a phone, right? That was already there. And so, the way that we kind of divide up the technology problem in, let's call it autonomy and precision agriculture, I think we think about it in 4 layers. You have the mobility layer, it's what's the machine that's moving in and around the field. There is the autonomy / navigation layer. It's how is that machine moving around the field and getting to the locations it needs to be. There is a implement layer here, and this is maybe the analogous to the apps. Like, what is the machine doing? It's the INGs of farming: weeding, seeding, harvesting, compost spreading, whatever is important to the grower. And then I would say there's a 4th layer, which is the plant sciences layer, and it's actually great that Steven's here because they very much represent this layer. It's detecting traits or things that are going on in the field in order to perform an action, within the field. And so what we normally see with robotics companies is they try to tackle all 4 of those layers. But then they specialize their solution to kind of, let's say, weeding in, vegetable-based bedded environments. The market opportunity is not big enough to justify the technology, capital requirements on the R&D side, to create a viable business. And so, we believe our thesis is if we can provide and solve for the mobility side, solve for the autonomy side, make it available and easy to use for implement solution providers, application solution providers, leverage the great work that's happening at USDA. So you're detecting what's going on in the field. So you're now performing precise tasks in the field. Now you can leverage components and capital investments that other companies are bearing to come up with a solution that is appropriate to a grower. And so it's also the opportunity here with the Farm Robotics Challenge. And again, borrowing Danny's analogy, we think the best opportunity here is let's develop the next generation of apps, next generation of smart implements, that can help our growers build more sustainably. And that's both economically, or on 3 levels: economically, for the environment, and then optimizing now maybe for, nutritional value of our food. So.
Great. Thank you, Brendan. Danny, we'll shoot over to you.
Yeah, just to build on it, is one thing we really want to encourage, and I've talked to Walt about this, is when you're thinking about the challenge, don't feel necessarily like you need to build every last thing for the robot. And is that like you can focus on 1 or 2 really special / disruptive things. You may have an amazing way, let's say, to track movement of your robotic arm, or you may be building a particular material for an end effector. It could be something really specific like that, but it could be a signal of your technical capability, or it could become a really critical part of the robotic stack that really makes agriculture possible. So you might be, kind of struggling with that right now, where you're really excited to build one really specific thing versus sort of spreading yourself across a bunch and maybe a bunch of like mediocre or superficial things. And I would just encourage you to be okay with the former, not the latter. And I would also offer that if you're unsure, just like reach out to us or reach out to Kelly, and we can kind of brainstorm with you on that. If you're kind of have a bit of a robotics writer's block, just don't hesitate to reach out.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So keeping in that kind of innovation lane for a moment, let's go back to you, Danny, real quick on, there's certain qualities that you're looking for in a team. what are those? What are some of the things that you think about when you're doing your due diligence on investment, or the sorts of people that you want to bring into your incubator? Could you share that with the group? Oh, you're muted.
I'll just throw out a few, and this is by no means comprehensive, but we're looking for really like a clear technical acumen. And so does this individual or does this team have a consistent track record of shipping on time and shipping, high quality outputs? That's, I think, for an early stage team, that's something that you're really clearly looking for. I would say also that we're looking for a level of humility in an early stage team, which is that they really know how to work with growers, how to work with the ag tech ecosystem, that they kind of have a keen sort of a sense of observance and a sense of listening. So they're then able to, number three, at least begin to articulate the problem they're trying to solve. And if you end up meeting an early stage, really technical founder or founding team, and you see those three things: deep tech chops, ability to articulate the problem, and our ability to take feedback, that can take a team pretty far. Because we're not expecting you to be the CEO that's going to take that company public. That's not reasonable for an early stage team. But so we end up looking and thinking about other things, and those are three of the things that we really look for and we get excited about for the Reservoir.
Great. Walt, I know you've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs. As you think about supporting the growers in your association, how do you work with young entrepreneurs? What is some of the advice you would give them?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I did get a chance to see a lot of early stage seed capital on their way up. And I would say, what I always talk to them about, as I said, you need to have a path to get to the next fundraising round. You need to show them what you're going to de-risk with their capital each round. And in general, you want to show that there's a leader on the product side that's got the technical chops Danny mentioned that can build the product, get him going. And you want someone who owns the go-to-market. So somebody owns the number and somebody owns the product. And again, the more you can show them a pattern match, and again, this is a little tough for student teams because you may not have done a ton of commercialization yet, but the more you can show them in terms of, hey, I got $500,000 from you and I de-risked the product and got it sold to one customer and got feedback from the customer of this, right? And just get all those proof points to match. That's huge. And as early as possible, we like to get them in for some grower feedback, like to get them in for maybe a grower demo. As soon as any product's ready to even hit the dirt, we're trying to get them into the dirt as often as we can. So those are my two things: is just who owns what swim lane for the early stage startups, and then when are you ready to get into the dirt / talk to the growers. The only other third point I'd make is I do see a lot of disconnects, and it's unfortunate. I see a lot of these folks maybe after an A round where stuff starts to settle. It's not concrete, but it's maybe quickcrete, right? And getting on the way to concrete. How comfortable are you with the economics the grower needs to hit? And do you have a business model that can work at their economics in parallel with your economics? And we see a lot of folks really have to scramble at that late stage, effort to go get that A or that B round because they didn't quite line that up. It's never too early to start talking about math. And in a lot of cases, Western growers, you're trying to act as a proxy for the grower because we know where a lot of the math is. So we're here to help in that regard because that's our job. So I would say those are my highlights for the early stage.
Great. Yeah, and I'd like to share with the group, for those of you who are joining in, that this is a little bit of a high-level conversation. You haven't thought about these things in terms of commercialization and kind of going down that entrepreneur path. Don't worry. Part of the programming throughout the year is to get you up to speed on these things. So it's not the first time you're going to hear this. We're going to have presenters throughout the 7-8 months of the whole program. And by the end of things, you're going to be very educated on what that means. So switching gears, if that's not your focus, which is fine, we know it's not for everybody, and you're more in the camp of, well, I really want to build some skills to help my career. That ag tech seems really interesting. It's certainly a need for it right now. What are the opportunities for me to go and work for a new company like Bonsai, or potentially go the research route with Stephen? And so, Stephen, I want to go over to you and ask you, in terms of bringing people onto your team or working with people that want to go down the research route or academia, what is some advice that you could give them if they're just starting out on this journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're just starting out, I mean, the most obvious one is, you got to get involved in internships, right? You have to get involved in fast-moving teams that are developing tech, whether it's public or private. Really, you've got to get out there and do and be out there in the trench learning and engaging, fast-moving teams so that you get sort of what it means to work in a team, and ideally that these teams have cross-disciplinary strength. I think when I see groups that are just a bunch of computer scientists or just a bunch of engineers, you're really getting a drift of what matters out in the agricultural system. So, I mean, if I were to add to both the previous question, answer to that one and this one, go outside. Go see farming, go see plant science, go see breeding plots, right? Engage this environment, because the reality of it is that climate, soil management, genetics interact to make the messiest thing in the world, right? And people need to make robust solutions that work everywhere for them to be scaled. And agriculture is just a messy problem. And it's really hard to convey how complicated agriculture is. And most engineers come into this space and they just grossly underestimate the complexity of an agro ecosystem. So if you want to get out there and get some experience, get a hands-on experience, go to a field, go to field days, interact with farmers, be on fast-moving teams that have both applied agricultural scientists as well as engineers.
Fantastic. Yeah. Just jump in the game. And hopefully that's what you're doing with this competition, because the first part is connecting with a farmer and making that partnership to learn about their needs so you can build a great project. Walt, you want to follow up?
Yeah, I did want to follow up, and I'm on a lot of campuses these days, Davis, Cal Poly, Fresno, Riverside, a lot of ag students, see a lot of folks. Don't overlook the fact that, yes, there's jobs on the investment side, folks like Danny, on the startup side, folks like Brendan, on the research side, stuff like Steven, but our growers need tech too, and they need ag tech too. You think about it, if you're selling a robot, like a Bonsai, like a FarmNG, any of them, Carbon Robotics, you've got to build it, you've got to sell it, you got to support it. And then from the other side, the customer needs to integrate it. So if you think about Taylor Farms, Driscoll's Berries, Braga Fresh, some of our bigger growers, they've got a ton of investment into ag tech that includes not just the machines, but the people internally to run those machines, report on those machines, help people like Western growers do the case studies on those machines. So we need ag tech in the startup environment and in the investor environment, but also in the operator environment. And so it's kind of up to you guys to figure out through self-discovery, am I more comfortable working with folks in a high-paced, high-tech startup-y environment that's got a little more risk? Not that ag doesn't have risks, or am I more comfortable with maybe a bigger organization with a different set of responsibilities on the integration side, maybe more than the product side, if that makes sense. So there's jobs in multiple areas.
And in your experience, do you have an idea of how developed that pipeline is now?
For ag tech?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say
Fulfilling those roles.
there's not a grower, and actually, I'll add one more. There's not a grower on our board, the 45 growers on our board, and then some of the folks even downstream from that in the mid tier that doesn't have a gap right now between ag tech they need and ag tech they have. And there's also a plethora of openings at the OEMs, the John Deeres and Case New Hollands of the world. Yes, financials times are a little tough right now in OEM land, and yes, there's been some layoffs recently, but they're also looking for young and energetic ag tech folks to take the mantle and go forward. So I think it's both growers and OEMs that are of interest. And I know they're both ag tech starved at the moment. They can't find enough of them. And so we work closely with the university partners I mentioned and others to try and get folks ready for them. Because if they're not ready coming out of either community college or four-year, guess what? The OEMs and the growers have to train them internally, which they can do. It just adds to the time to get them ramped up.
Yeah. So students, lots of opportunities out there.
Yes.
I want to give some specific examples. I'm going to kick it over to Brendan, because I know that you have actually hired several students that participated in the challenge and brought them into roles in your company. Could you talk about that a little bit and how those new hires have done, and why the challenge has been a good source for you?
Yeah. maybe I'll start with why it's a good source, and then I'll talk about the roles in which we've hired into the organization. What's great about the challenge here overall is it provides a opportunity to gain these experiences that everyone here is talking about. Basically a tangible grower solution that gives you an opportunity to touch grass, as Walt was saying. It gives you an opportunity to also learn these foundational concepts in building robotic solutions, while it also teaches you how to think through commercializing a product. And now I think this year, on top of it all, there's actually an avenue in funding that supports the commercialization of these projects. But for us, we see the challenge. Students, they come out with like fundamental knowledge in mechanical and electrical engineering. They've kind of battled with perception and autonomy problems. How do you get this robot to move around in the field? And they've been thinking about, well, how do I make this useful for a grower and have it embedded in the workflow? Like, how do I make it work? And so for us, having people then come out with that experience, they can really hit the ground running. And so we've hired, I think it's two, minimum of two, maybe three people from that's come out of the university challenge, and this is on the Farm NG side. One is a kind of a software perception engineer. Another is a sales solutions engineer, and they're some of our top performers within the business. In fact, Guy, who was at UC Davis, just won the Employee of the Month this past month. So anyway, they're having a high impact, and I think the cohort and this the experience here, we definitely, as a business, as we continue to grow, this is going to be a pool of candidates that we kind of prioritize on a go forward basis.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah. I know Guy well, so good job, Guy. Let's see. We're kind of rounding out the hour. I wanted to get to a few topics. One of them is environmental. And I talked to a lot of students through the challenge. In the late spring, I visited UC Davis and I did a presentation for the Green Sustainability Club. And they're really interested in this challenge and driven to make an environmental impact with their work. And I know that resonates with a lot of the students. So I'm going to kick this one over to you, Stephen, to start out. What are some of the major challenges? We're thinking big picture again, and remember that you're talking to students that aren't necessarily super familiar with ag and plant sciences. So just broadly, like, what is the state of our environment? What are we looking at? How can precision ag really help remedy some of the things?
Yeah, sure. So to just give some, slight context, right? Ag has been moving more and more towards large scale machinery that homogenizes and simplifies all management across the field, right? So we're routinely managing like a 400-acre field like it's a single unit, applying nutrients across that entire field, like all of the requirements of the plants in that field are the same, or irrigating that field like it behaves the same. Well, it turns out fields are incredibly spatially variable, right? We have poor drainage parts of the field. We have really good drainage parts of the field. We have soils that vary spatially significantly across these fields. So what ends up happening is we're often, for example, putting down nutrients like nitrogen, a really important nutrient, into parts of a field that's not even responding at all to any level of nitrogen, right? We have a non-responsive zone in the field. So we're putting down a nutrient where a plant doesn't need it, and vice versa. We have parts of the field that would outperform the rest of the field, but we're not giving it enough nutrients because we are treating the field like it's a single unit. And what technology allowing us to do is move in the other direction, right? The whole mantra has been get big or get out, right? So we have machinery that's covering anywhere between 30 feet to 160 feet in one pass. And so when you have to manage that kind of space and you have that kind of constraints around machinery, you're just shooting across all of this spatial variability. So as we start to shrink down agriculture, right, we have more sort of robotic platforms that are scale neutral. And so it's no longer, are you getting bigger or get back out, but, just are you like a 1 robot farm or are you a 100 robot farm, right? you have this scale neutral technology. There's a lot of investment on this smaller unit, but it gives everybody access to getting into this. And then all of a sudden you can start to manage at smaller units, right? And so some of the practices and the operations will occur at smaller units. I'm generalizing this to give it sort of to the audience sort of a better understanding, but that's where we're going, right? We need to get to site specific management. We have the intelligence that's getting there. We have the equipment that's getting there. It's putting this all together in a system so we can start to manage very localized levels.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, very well said. Let's talk about a different issue now. Let's move over to economics. So we'll start with Danny and maybe go to you, Walt. But what are some of the big kind of macroeconomic things that are happening that are affecting agriculture that you're seeing?
Gosh, I mean, there are a lot, and I think that that's something that maybe I would encourage every team to do, which is just to start to get a bit curious about reading the headlines. And a lot of us use those sort of tailored news feeds now. Maybe it's driven by our search activity, but I think it's really important to kind of have that empathy to get a feel for it, and then each grower will sort of have their own version of that story. So, for example, today I was at Tanamura and Antle, and I had the pleasure of hearing Gary Tanamura kind of provide an update on the lettuce business. And so they're dealing with some challenges related to labor. He's talking about how the current administration is wanting more and more labor to be H-2A or documented labor. And what Gary's very open about is that some of his most trusted experienced employees are what he calls domestic, which essentially are folks who have kind of more ambiguous status. And so he's talking about sort of the connection between the current administration and sort of the ambiguity around labor and labor status. That's one. The other is, for example, he's saying that he referenced the Make America Healthy Again. He's saying, well, we're not necessarily seeing that because we're seeing slightly softer demand for leafy greens and vegetables, which are their core products. And so some of what he's saying is implying is that maybe there's some changes in consumer behavior around consumption of leafy greens and vegetables. Maybe it's related to sort of the uptake in diet pills and diet drugs, I should say. And maybe that is changing consumer behavior with 5+% of Americans already sort of experimenting with various sort of products like that. So I think those are a couple where we're seeing basically at the macro level impacts to labor supply. We're seeing changes in consumer behavior. And those are a few. I think that when it comes to the equipment manufacturers, obviously tariffs and tariff related topics are really significant. We're starting to see videos coming out of China of what looks like pretty capable, probably less expensive, manufactured equipment, which I'm sure Brendan has a perspective about because they talk about it inside of Bonsai. So one of the exciting things about ag is how closely connected it is to every macro trend. And but it's also like makes it feel really real where you wake up and you're like, gosh, look at everything that impacts ag. So those are just a couple things that come to mind, so a couple things that make ag feel a little bit more real and grounded.
Excellent. Thank you, Danny. Walt, did you have anything to follow up on that?
Yeah, I do, and I'll give an example. And it's in the small robot segment, the one that FarmNG is in. It's from a company that's been out there a little bit longer. It's called Burrow. And what's interesting about Burrow is they dug in, and Charlie Anderson is about as smart a CEO as you'll get, right? And he looked at harvest about 10 years ago now, almost, I think 2016. That's the first time I met Charlie for, I guess, 9 years. And he said, man, that harvest stuff looks really hard. He looked at the economics. He came from a farming background. He was working at Case at the time. And he said, that's too hard. But what Charlie found after he dug back into the farming and took a look at the process was he said, you know what? Harvest is really hard. The ability to pick that, especially 9 years ago, it's still hard today, right? Picking that broccoli, picking that romaine, picking that apple off a tree or out of a field and getting it off safely and not injured and into a bin of some type and putting it into a process from there, that's really, really hard. But he said, you know what? What if I just took the product from the harvest crew and took it back to the truck? And that's how Burrow started. And they didn't just start with what's called Harvest Assist. he started with Harvest Assist in one crop because he figured out that this crop could provide one of the biggest benefits. He started with table grapes. So to the focus question earlier, Charlie started, roughly 7, 8 years ago with his first product doing just Harvest Assist logistics back to the truck for table grapes. And he really didn't get to do a second project for almost 5 years, just nailing that exercise and understanding the grower economics around not just what does it cost to get a harvest done, but it also cost me a lot to get that back to the truck. It became a better experience for the farm workers. It became a better experience for the team. They saved 15 to 30% with this farm logistics solution. And I don't think Charlie would have gotten there if he hadn't grown up on a ranch and understood there's more to it than just harvest. So he understood both sides of economics, came up with a good solution, and now, they're on their way and getting to scale.
Good story. Love that. I saw a question in the chat that I just wanted to address really quick before we go to the next one, and I'm just going to read it for everybody. What is the sentiment towards teams that have a larger focus on AI and computer vision for means of detection instead of robots for planting or harvesting activities? Well, I think this year we're certainly open to many types of different projects, and we actually have a category award that is excellence in AI. So if you're doing an AI project, it could even just be software based, would definitely be potential for that award. So I would encourage you to go that route, or some of the other awards as well, because at the end of the day, if it's a solution that's going to help farmers with the problems, then it's definitely open for the competition. Yeah, Walt?
Yeah, no, just wanted to jump in on this one. I can't agree with the question more. It is a legitimate question how big hardware and software are going to be over the next 10 years. But I continue to believe from what I see in the general robotic space outside of ag tech and what I believe will come into ag tech over the next 5 to 10 years. I think right now, and Brendan, I'd love your feedback. I mean, I think there's a heavy hardware requirement on all form factors of robots. I think that will start to get a little bit solved in the next 3 to 5 years. So if you're on the early stage, if you're on the first half of your college career, by the time you get done, I think the software need will get more intense. And if you're going on to graduate school or building a company around that, I think the software need is going to get really big. And I think it's probably half and half hardware and software today. It probably goes 2/3 software over the next 5 to 10 years. And I think that's good for startups because I think if you can move to that environment, the ability to develop software tools is getting easier and faster than ever, thanks to a lot of the AI tools we've seen emerge the last couple of years. I think those startups can get built with less capital, get to MVP in less time with less capital, and exit for, call it 25 to 50 million on, say, 2 to 3 million in. Whereas previously you'd probably take 10 to 15 million to build that and need like a 75 to 100 million hour. So I think your exits can get smaller, your time to exit can get quicker. And I think software is definitely, it's like the old Graduate movie. The one word was plastics for Dustin Hoffman back in the day. The one word right now for you guys on the post-college career might be software more than hardware. And I'll let Brendan weigh in.
Yeah, as someone that comes from a hardware business, you'll be surprised to hear that I actually completely agree with Walt. Like I think like fundamentally what we believe autonomy best, the value of autonomy is best realized through new form factors. That those form factors do not exist today. But as we start to develop the form factors and see the tangible ROI that they provide to growers, there will be kind of a plethora of kind of hardware vendors that will start to build for specific use cases. And at that point, it's the software platform, the software capabilities that really are the most important enabler to creating value in the field. And so we on a long-term basis feel we always say this about Bonsai, and this was true with the FarmNG story. Our vision was always to get to software, but felt that we had to support the ecosystem by building the hardware to prove the value and then enable kind of the next generation of form factors to start to permeate the market.
Great, let's go. Thanks, Brendan. Let's go over to Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. I mean, the narrative that I like to say is, agriculture is 1,000,001 computer vision solutions, right? Sure, some of the big companies are going to knock off some of the tough ones, or the ones where you could build a big market around that. But to digitize agriculture is an incredibly costly, challenging task, and it's going to require lots of development of the software. It's going to require a lot of collaboration, particularly on the public side, to be able to build the ecosystem of training data required for the range of solutions that are out there. I mean, there's just a myriad of just nuances that private industry is not going to build around. And so there's just a lot of opportunity both in the private and the public sector, I guess is my point, around digitizing agriculture and developing the applications we need to sort of provide both precision agriculture, but also, the environmental stewardship we were getting at earlier, Kelly.
Great. I think this is a perfect lead in to our last question, actually. I wrote down that I wanted to ask you guys, what does agriculture look like in the next 5 to 10 years? Who's doing the farming? What does that farm look like? And the reason I want to ask that question is because we have students all the way down to the middle school level that could be watching this video that are thinking about their future, or if you're in college and you want to think, what career can I land after I graduate, or what are the opportunities going to be? So we've talked about it a little bit, but is there anything you would add to kind of paint that picture for the students and where they could end up, what you think the farm environment is going to look like? Anybody want to jump in first?
I mean,
Else wants to go? Go ahead.
I'll tee it up.
All right, Danny.
Yeah, I'll tee it up for Brendan and Walt and Stephen. I love the picture behind Brendan. I'm excited about farms that have multiple robots from multiple OEMs. Those are rovers. Those are drones. Those are, they look like R2-D2. They look like C-3PO, if people are old enough to know what Star Wars is. And then these robots actually have to figure out how to work together. I think that's really exciting. You have to be able to handle fleet management sort of for your own robots, like in then background for Brendan, but also between different robots, which is really exciting. So we're going to see more and more of that. It's inevitable. Otherwise, we're importing more and more and more of our food supply. And so I really think that we're at this sort of invention of necessity moment. And we're really reliant on sort of the up and coming generation or the folks that are in school now to address some of those challenges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe I'll add there quickly. Like, I guess for us, and I kind of alluded to this, we see the future of, I guess farm applications more broadly being supported by autonomy. And then we see that autonomy is best, the value of autonomy is best realized in new form factors. And that means moving away from bigger and bigger equipment that's very capital intensive and thus justifies, large farms to even make it, kind of economically viable to leverage that equipment, and a movement towards smaller equipment where you scale based on number of robots that are performing in a swarm type of capacity. And so, and then we believe that then unlocks and makes it cost effective to pursue more precision-based agricultural practices, where you can start to make decisions on the farm based on plant level information versus field level information. So as we get smaller, it allows us to be more precise, allows us to perform tasks that are specific to the plants, which we think lowers costs, improves the food quality, and is better for the environment overall. So.
Yeah, I would say the farm of the future, I get to see it all the time at our larger operators. And it's like Brendan says, and I think Danny would echo that you've got the large tractors. You've got in the case of West Coast Ag, that means 5 and 6 series Deere tractors often. We don't even need the 7s, 8s, 9s as much. And then you've got them pulling implements behind them to do different things. All the ings that Brendan mentioned are right? Planting, thinning, weeding, spraying. Some of them are autonomous, some are not. You've got small form factors doing things like scouting and doing things like harvest assist I mentioned earlier, and the stuff that Amiga does. And so you'll have a variety of form factors you'll have a variety of tasks going on any given day. And it was interesting. I went to the UK and I worked I went to see G's Fresh over there. They're one of the progressives. They would be equivalents like a Taylor Farms over in the US. And they actually had on 500 acres 11 different harvest robots in various phases from prototyping to commercial scale to actually out in production. And it was so impressive because I don't think a lot of the guys that we were with the team of the G's guys, I don't think they consider themselves ag tech guys, but the deeper you got into the discussion, the more you realize it's almost becoming table stakes to understand the basics because so many robots are out there doing so many things. And you've got to plan for where does this robot need to be tomorrow and the day after and the day after. And harvest may be the most critical because if you're off by a day or two, it can be fairly catastrophic. And so think of the logistics, think of the operational integration, think of the communication skills that needs to go on to get all that to happen relatively easily with good operational efficiency. It was impressive to watch, and it is certainly on par of the stuff I saw at G's with stuff Taylor and Braga and Rava and the rest of the big guys over here are using. So look for more robots per acre, and more work being done by robots, which means they'll get even busier. I think in 5 years.
Great. Thank you, Walt. Yeah, going back to the Star Wars analogy, Danny, the first time I saw the laser weeder, I'm like, oh, this is straight out of Star Wars. So,
but is it
love it.
R2D2 or C3PO, right?
Just a laser barge, right? Floating around.
Right, because it need help.
Stephen, did you have any kind of closing thoughts? We're coming up on the hour here, and I want to respect your guys' time, but give everybody a chance to speak.
No, I think that the panel discussion covered this well, and just appreciate the opportunity to be part of the dialogue here. This has been a lot of fun, so thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm going to echo that. I thank you guys for taking the time to do this. It was exactly what I was hoping for. So I'm glad we got it recorded. We'll put it out for all those that couldn't be here live with us. But if you did tune in live, thanks for taking the time. I hope you got a lot out of it. You know where to contact us. If you haven't signed up for the Farm Robotics Challenge, hop on our website and do that. We're taking registration through October 10th. And yeah, you got a community behind you. We're here to support you. Reach out to us. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
We're gonna